On the Common Link Theory, CLT, by Fahad al-Alhomoudi. Continuing Sufyan al-Thawri's relationship with Abbasid caliphs and Mansur in particular. Moreover, in Al-Asbahani's biography of Sufyan, there is not a single quotation referring to a conflict of any kind between Sufyan and the Abbasids. Instead, he is depicted as having offered them advice and constantly prayed for them. An incomplete picture then is presented by Juynboll of the relationship between Sufyan and the Abbasid regime, and used to substantiate the faulty idea that anti-authoritarian sentiment was expressed by him in one or more fabricated hadiths. As a result, Juynboll asserts that Sufyan was a very likely fabricator of this hadith. Another important socio-historical consideration is the biography of Sufyan as it pertains to his credibility as a transmitter, which Juynboll impugned. In sharp contrast, Yahya bin Ma'in, Ibn Uyayna, Shu'bah, and other muhaddiths all considered Sufyan to be Amir al-Mu'mineen, ruler of believers in terms of his rank as a transmitter of hadith. Wahib and Yahya al-Qattan believed Sufyan was even more reliable than Malik ibn Anas, who died in 179-796. The compiler of Al-Muwatta, the oldest hadith collection Malik was. Al-Khatib writes, Sufyan is a well-known imam, religious scholar, and everyone agrees that his credibility reached a point where he needed no more recommendations. Most importantly, Sufyan's reputation was for reliability extended to all the other transmitters to whom he chose to transmit. Towards the end of his life, while hiding in Mecca and then in Basra, it was no small effort on his part to meet with people for the purpose of transmitting hadiths. These circumstances limited the number of transmitters who could meet him to a very few trustworthy muhaddiths whom he must have deemed reliable and worthy of the task of transmitting hadith. For it was the unanimous opinion of the Muslim traditionists that Sufyan was extremely careful as to whom he chose to transmit hadith. His excessive care not to transmit to unreliable muhaddiths led to his refusal to transmit to non-Arabs, many of whom by this time did not master Arabic, and those subjects written in the language of Arabic. He is reported to have said, knowledge was transmitted by Arabs, and when it was taken by non-Arabs or by non-trustworthy people, they will mix it up. This specific quotation poses a significant question about the hadith Tubna al-Madina. Why do we encounter untrustworthy narrators in the transmission of this hadith from Sufyan? Why didn't some of the more famous scholars, whom Sufyan trusted and used to meet with discreetly, narrate this hadith? In fact, the only exception is the reliable transmitter Abdur Razzaq San'ani, who states precisely that this was not one of Sufyan's hadiths. Apparently, Sufyan had nothing to do with spreading the isnads of this hadith to all those untrustworthy transmitters. It must have been another of its transmitters who fabricated this hadith. The question then is not whether there is not or there is no common link in this nad, but what is the common link and who is the common link? Through the following diagram, 4a, Juynboll intended to demonstrate Sufyan fabricated the hadith Tubna al-Madina. Surprisingly, he ignored any other possible interpretation of the isnad that held other transmitters being responsible for the common link. The isnad prior to Sufyan goes chronologically as follows. Jarir, who died in 51, a well-known companion, then Abu Uthman, who died in 95, then Asim, who died in 140, both of whom are reliable, or all of whom are reliable transmitters. However, Juynboll did not accuse any of them of being the common link for this isnad. Rather, he states that we are not far wrong in dating the tradition in the late 40s or early 50s, 765 to 70, or at any rate before Sufyan's death in 161-776. Since Baghdad was built in 145-762, and the Hadith Tubna Madina, which contains specific descriptions about Baghdad, was composed and began to circulate after the city's construction, Asim, who died in 140, or any of his predecessors, could not possibly be its originator. And the diagram Tubna Madina with the isnads and the links are given. And then the diagram of the hadith from the Prophet Jarir, Abu Uthman, Asim, who narrates to Sufyan, Saif, Abu Sihab, Muhammad ibn Jarir, Al-Muharibi, and Ammar. And then Umar's isnad extends to Ahmed bin Yaqub, Malik bin Ismail, Ishaq ibn Mansur, Hussein ibn Ashqar, Yahya ibn Khair, Khalaf ibn Tamim, and Sufyan's goes to Abdul Razak, Al-Ghathani, Ismail ibn Amr, Abdul Aziz, Ismail ibn Abban, Ammar ibn Abi Bakr, and Khalaf ibn Tamim. In the interests of accuracy, we should investigate the 6 transmitters who narrated the hadith via Asim, all of whom could potentially be the common link. The first transmitter is Sufyan al-Thawri, identified by Juynboll as the common link. It is important to point out that one of the 6 transmitters who narrated this hadith from him was the second transmitter, Ammar ibn Sayf, who died in 260, who is more likely the common link and therefore the fabricator responsible for spreading this hadith to 7 of his students. 2 of them, Khalaf ibn Tamim and ibn Abi Bakr, narrated this hadith from him via Sufyan ibn Asim, while the other 5 narrated it from him via Asim directly. They are Khalaf ibn Tamim, died in 206, an honest and religious Kufan of the 4th rank; Ishaq ibn Masur as-Salwuli, who died in 204, an honest Kufan of the 5th rank, but criticized for being a Shi'i; 3. Malik ibn Ismail, who died in 219, a reliable Kufan transmitter of the 2nd rank, as further attested by Ibn Hibban, Abu Dawood and Nasa'i, and praised by Ibn Ma'in, who said, "I did not see any transmitter more authentic than Malik ibn Ismail." 4. Ahmed ibn Yaqub al-Masudi, who died in 824, a reliable Kufan of the 3rd rank, whom Ibn Hibban and al-Ijli remarked he is a reliable transmitter. Yahya bin Bukhair is number 5, who died in 209, a reliable Kufan of the 3rd rank who lived in Baghdad, and about whom Ibn Hibban and Ijli and Ibn Ma'in stated he is a reliable transmitter. 6. Hussein al-Ashqar, for whom we have no biographical information. From these brief biographies of Ammar's students, we can conclude that all of them were reliable. It is reasonable and sufficient evidence for Muhaddis, then, to link Hadith Tubna Madina to Ammar, since all the reliable transmitters attributed the Hadith to him. In stark contrast, most of the transmitters who attributed the Hadith to Sufyan are weak. Besides, Ammar ibn Sayf, they are 1. Abdullah ibn Sufyan al-Ghathani, unknown death, date, a Basran of the 11th rank who was famous for narrating problematic isnads from famous transmitters, and whom Ibn Ma'in accused of being a liar. 2. Ismail ibn Amr, died 277, a Kufan of the 8th rank, considered by Ibn Aruma, Ad-Darakutni, and Ibn Adi as a weak transmitter, and whom Ibn Adi accused of narrating from Sufyan hadiths that no one else has heard. 3. Abdul Aziz ibn Abban, died in 207, a Kufan of the 11th rank, who lived in Baghdad and was accused by Ibn Ma'in and others of being a liar, Ibn Hajar having stated that he is matruk, rejected. 4. Ismail ibn Abban, died in 210, a Kufan matruk, rejected, of the 11th rank, who is also accused of fabricating hadiths, and of whom it is stated that he used to put hadiths into circulation, or he used to put hadiths into Sufyan's mouth, which further suggests that Sufyan had no hand in fabricating this hadith. And 5. Abdul Razak al-San'ani, who died in 211, a well-known and reliable transmitter of the 2nd rank, who experienced diminished eyesight and memory in his old age. However, because he was the only reliable transmitter from Sufyan recorded in this hadith isnad, his contribution deserves a second look. Indeed, a survey of primary sources reveals that Abdul Razak narrated the hadith to invalidate it, i.e. to warn muhaddiths against narrating it to Sufyan. Generally speaking, muhaddiths have a tendency of reporting hadith of weak transmitters to indicate its invalidity. Once, Ahmed ibn Hanbal saw Yahya ibn Ma'in writing the hadith of Ma'mar via Abban via Anas, so he asked for the reason of writing such da'if hadith. He replies that he is writing it from Abdul Razak, who writes the hadith of Ma'mar just to report to muhaddiths the unauthenticity of such an isnad. Abdul Razak and Yahya ibn Ma'in, moreover, both recorded Yahya ibn Abban's statement that no one recorded the hadith or narrated the hadith Tubna al-Madina other than Ammar ibn Sayf. Yahya ibn Ma'in even adds, some transmitters narrated it from Ammar and Asim directly, while others inserted Sufyan between Ammar and Asim, but the hadith has no genuine origin. Thus, the last transmitter who might have supported Juynboll's argument tends to undermine it. Moreover, Yahya bin Adam claims that Ammar found this hadith in a book and proclaimed that he heard it from Sufyan. Of the 4 transmitters, all are accused of lying. One of them was from Basra, while the other 3 were colleagues about the same age from Kufa, indicated a closed circle of circulation. Stay tuned.